I was ready for what I expected, the flute. If Mr. Nevinson were right, in due time I'd hear it, for I had touched the manuscript. He had touched it, and he believed that his daughter Jessie, in the process of searching for stamps in the desk drawer in which he'd kept the manuscript, had touched it too. They both heard this spectral flute now. I learnt the significance of all this on a steamer journey to Hood de Vries with Mr. Nevinson, Mrs. Nevinson, and Jessie. Mr. Nevinson had invited me to go there, the site of his company's upriver station, telling me that he wanted me to paint forest scenes for the walls of his company's renovated office in town. But, as he admitted later, this was only a pretext. In fact, he was afraid to go there alone, and under some compulsion to go. We were friends, Mr. Nevinson and I, and we were both interested in the unusual. Knowing this, he got me involved in this weird affair. We had together read the manuscript, with its threat that whoever touched it would have to listen to a dead Dutchman's flute music and join him where he was later. I had touched the manuscript, and now we were settling in at Hood de Vries. It was a place of action in this story of
My bones and my flute.
After Jessie and I had explored the house thoroughly, I left her and went out to join Mr. Nevinson and Rayburn. I saw them in the now deep twilight, standing at the foot of the front steps in casual conversation. Mr. Nevinson was smoking a pipe, and there seemed no figure of greater contentment to be found anywhere. Not by the slightest gesture of a hand, nor the lift of an eyebrow, did he betray that something was troubling him. He smiled at me as I came up, and then said,
"Rayburn, this is the gentleman I was telling you about who paints pictures, Mr. Milton Woodsley."
"Very pleased to meet you, sir," Rayburn exclaimed, with a wide, very deferential smile, and I fear I embarrassed him considerably by extending my hand. He took it, shook it briefly, and released it as though it were a chunk of hot metal, and this despite the firmness of my own grip. Naturally, he could not know that I was accustomed to shaking the hands of such people as porters and stevedores and other so-called low-class persons. He must have expected from me just the cool, patronizing smile and nod of a middle-class young man. After we had chatted casually for a few minutes, Mr. Nevinson knocked out his pipe against the heel of his shoe, and in the most nonchalant voice possible said, "By the way, Rayburn, you remember that little canister you left in my room when I was here last month? Who was it that actually handed it to you to give to me? Was it Patois' woman herself?" "Yes, sir. Matilda. She give it to me herself. She hand it to me and say the old man promise it to you when he dead, and I must take it and give it to you."
"Matilda? I didn't know that was her name. Is she still at Horstonland in Patworth's cottage, or has she gone to live with her own relatives now?"
To which Rayburn replied, "Well, no, sir. Matter of fact, she dead. Day before yesterday she get drowned in the river near the cottage where she and the old man used to live."
"Drowned? How did it happen? I thought all these bucks were good swimmers."
"Sir, I don't know really how it happened myself. I've been hearing some stupid story. These river people's too superstitious, sir. I'm glad I come from town. If you born and grow up on this river, you must get stupid and superstitious."
"You find superstitious people in town too, Rayburn. Don't fool yourself. But what was this stupid story you heard?"
Rayburn chuckled. "Sir, people saying Matilda dead because a spirit haunt her after Patois dead. They say she didn't treat the old man good when he was alive, and as soon as his eyes close in death, he begin to haunt her. They say his spirit haunt her till she dead."
"I see. And what form did this haunting take?"
Rayburn shifted about his feet in a self-conscious manner, as though he felt that he had made himself ridiculous enough as it was by repeating such a tale. He said, "Sir, it's just a lot of nonsense. I didn't worry to pay too much attention to it. I heard them saying that Matilda used to hear some kind of music near her cottage. She tell people she hear a flute playing, but she couldn't see nobody playing it. She was out of her head, sir. Every day she say flute get closer and closer, till just the day before she dead she cry out and say she see a white man dancing before her. And her sister, who was staying with her, say Matilda tremble all over and swear the spirit call out to her in a soft voice and tell her to follow him and join him in the grave. That was how she get drowned, sir. She followed the spirit into the river and get drowned. The woman was clear out of her mind, sir. That what was wrong with her." Candleflies abound on the coast of Guyana. They are fragile and hurried little creatures, the size and weight of old threepenny pieces, and will serenely crawl over your wrist or sleeve, glowing at brief intervals. On a dark night, you can see them like soft sparks amid the foliage of shrubs and even very tall trees, for they fly high sometimes. Or you may be lying sleepless in bed, and at your window a green-white eye will suddenly glow into being and vanish in silent mystery. Sometimes among the rafters one of them will appear as a fluffy bleb, darting swiftly from beam to beam, or in a downward arc, green and deadly still, so that you have the inclination to bury your face in your pillow, as though to avoid some intangible menace. In the interior, however, there are no candleflies. At least I encountered none. But of fireflies there are a plenty. There are about an inch in length, with bodies roughly cylindrical in shape. Candleflies glow on their underbellies, but with fireflies it's different. I know it will sound incredible to people who have never seen one at close quarters, but nevertheless it is a fact, and you can always verify it by taking a trip up the Berbice River. Fireflies are equipped with 2 brilliant bluish-white headlights and a reddish tail light. Yes, it's no joke. It is actually so. I have examined them too many times not to know. Standing at my bedroom window on this first night at Hood de Vries, I caught one as it emerged out of the dark and alighted with ghostly silence on the window-sill. Holding it between thumb and forefinger, I observed it with fascination. The tail light glowed only at intervals, but the twin lights in front never went out. They would be bright now, now dim, now bright again, evidently as the creature's mood varied. Once they did fool me that they were about to go out when, with alarming abruptness, they came alive, and came alive with such a shock of brilliance that instinctively I had the inclination to release the creature for fear of being burnt. The 2 windows of my room looked out upon the southern, or, if you will, upstream section of the clearing, which meant that only jungle and river met my gaze as I stood there staring out. The northern bedroom on the other side of the cottage, which Mrs. Nevinson and Jessie were occupying, commanded a view of the downstream section, where the sawmill and the labourers' loggie stood. The air was heavy with water vapour, and the scent of vegetation and river water, a musty, sweetish rankness that at one instant would seem very refreshing and make you want to breathe deeply, then would suddenly awaken your distrust, for there would seem to enter it an earthy dankness, as of centuries of rotting leaves and the bones of long-buried corpses. The insects whirred and hummed in a deep background chorus, to which the senses very easily grew accustomed, because it was such a monotonous bourdon. Occasionally a frog would chirp somewhere in the jet darkness and then grow still, never to be heard again, almost leaving the impression that some hand had deliberately stifled it. But what held me most of all were the fireflies. Against the unbroken black of the jungle and over the surface of the sluggishly flowing river, in which the stars could be seen reflected, the fireflies made a perpetual display. It was a dance, wavering, untiring, silent. Aimless flecks of glowing down, they hovered and dived and rose and crisscrossed, futile and unmeaning. Pygmy lanterns weaving pencils of light in the moist gloom. When I watched them too intently, I found that their effect on me began to be mesmeric. I seemed to see them coming at me and then receding, coming and receding. And once in coming they seemed to multiply into thousands and millions of cool, intense points, and a feeling cloaked down upon me that there was a quality about them, furry and wicked, frosty, as though they might be things from a region of polar lights, and might themselves be segments of an icy peril that would probe into the human frame with a numbing rigor. I just had to stand watching them, engrossed, until I smiled and shook off the spell, though even when actuality invaded me again I had to shudder slightly and warn myself not to get too wrapped up in dreams and white specks of light. The river made a soft sucking at the shrubs that bordered the bank, a secretive sibilance that somehow seemed even more remote and lost than the whir and hum of the insects. When I did bring myself to an awareness of it, I felt startled, imagining it to be the hiss of a snake or a rustling of light garments. Almost at once, I did feel certain I could hear someone moving in the darkness out there, someone arrayed in silk. I was at Hudris. Much was to happen there. I could feel it as I watched fireflies that night. The story was unfolding. The terrible series of events I have come to call
My bones and my flute.